Well, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us. Today is the kickoff of Mental Health Week, and this year's theme is exploring empathy. And part of this week, we'll be having lunchtime panels like this, starting at 12:15 every day, and we want to, explore different topics that relate to mental health and other issues in our community. So we're really fortunate and grateful to have three panelists joining us. Councilor Michael Janz is maybe able to join us, and we will tag him in if and when he does. But right now we do have Marlos Taylor from Boyle Street Community Services, Nicolas, founder of the Addictions Don't Discriminate exhibit, and Vanessa Glade from Boyle Street Community Services as well. My name is Alex Aboud. I'm with CMHA, and I'm here to introduce our speakers and keep things moving along. So please, if you have any questions throughout the talk, put them in the Q&A. And reminder to can learn more about Mental Health Week, and we have sessions happening all week. And you can still register at the link that I just dropped in the chat. So you're not here to listen to me talk. So with that said, gonna ask everybody to share a bit about themselves and their stories to start, beginning with Marliss and then Ethan and Vanessa.
Thank you so much, and welcome everyone, and thank you for coming. My name is Marlos Taylor, and I'm a registered nurse, and I have been working in the downtown core area with the Streetworks program now for, oh my God, coming up to 28 years. And so I feel like very much a part of this community. And it's given me lots of time to think about things like mental health and substance use, and what is actually an addiction, what helps people the most. And I think what we're dealing with right now is a drug poisoning crisis, and I call it that rather than an opioid crisis, because sometimes people are trying to buy a certain kind of substance, or they believe they're using a certain kind of substance, and in fact it's been adulterated with something like fentanyl or something else in it, and then people, even if they didn't want to use opioids, are using opioids and then losing consciousness, for example. And so a lot of this is about thinking, how can we help this problem? What can we do? And I think where I've come to is there's a big picture issue around we need to be thinking about housing and expanded mental health services, and addressing things like poverty and racism and all the rest of it, that have an impact on people's health. But then there's lots of other things that we can be doing. I'm really pleased because our program was the first one in Canada, the Streetworks program, to have community-based naloxone back in 2005. And we did it then because we were concerned about the number of people that were overdosing. And now since 2016, we've had this horrible explosion of mortality and morbidity related to these drug poisonings. So what are some things we can do? I think we can do naloxone for sure. Make sure that as many people as possible are trained in and carrying naloxone. I think we need to be thinking about things like drug checking services, which has been something that's some levels of government might be a bit concerned about. However, I'm really thrilled because Aware this week, this weekend, it was announced that Aware, the Alberta advocates who educate, what is it? Alliance, yes. They just changed their name. Alberta Alliance who Educate and Advocate Responsibly will be doing a mobile drug checking program in Calgary. So that gives us hope that maybe we can do that further. We need to be thinking about things like supervised consumption services and overdose prevention sites. Those are not, the media loves calling them a shooting gallery. It's a place where people come in, yes, they use their substances, but that's also the time that they do all kinds of really great work and talking with people figuring out what's their next step, what sorts of things can they do to move to a place of greater stability. There's just so many positives to that kind of a program. I think the two biggest things that we need to be thinking about, one is decriminalization, because what we have here is a situation where people are afraid to seek help because of the stigma, but also because of the legalities. And so when someone wants to get help, they may not feel comfortable talking to a physician or walking into a place because they're using a drug that happens to be criminalized, as opposed to alcohol, which isn't, for example. So I think that's a really important step. The other really important step that we're hearing about more and more is safer supply. And what we're talking about there is that we know that so many people will be using substances. We know we've had all of these deaths. What's happening is that they're buying substances that nobody knows what's in it. And so if we can just help people by providing them with a pharmaceutical grade of substance, then at least we can help them stay alive. They can judge exactly what it is that they're using. And then it cuts down on that frantic, chaotic, trying to find your drugs and trying to use your drugs secretly and perhaps overdosing, but if not, then continuing this cycle. So I think there's some really tangible things that we can be doing. And I also think, just as a kind of a final thought, is that just to bear in mind that our legal drugs, which are, let's say, tobacco, alcohol, and cannabis, that the difference between them and other drugs a lot of times is the legal designation. What makes a lot of illicit substances dangerous is the fact that they're illegal and people can't can't judge a dose. They can't figure out what sorts of things are going to help them stay alive. So that's why I think as we hear more about safe supply, that is something that we absolutely must be considering seriously and being courageous. We've been doing the same thing for 50 years and it hasn't worked. So let's do something different and see if we can make some real change. So I think I'll stop there, or I will continue on and on. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Marliss. And I just wanted to welcome Councilor Michael Janz from Ward Papasteo for joining us. Councilor, we've asked, so Marliss has spoken, Ethan and then Vanessa are going to share a bit about their stories, and then we'll turn it over to you, facilitate the conversation and say anything else you'd like to. So I know you're quite active on this file. So thank you for joining us. And
yeah, apologies. I got into Zoom confusion. Thank you.
No, we appreciate you being able to join us. It's a busy, councilors always have busy schedules.
I guess that leaves it up to me. My name is Ethan Nicholas, owner and operator of Fight Me On This, author of Grit to Grace. They gave me time to talk to you guys today, and I'm just going to tell you my story. I'm going to tell you why I'm sitting here at all. My story starts at 5 years old, surviving a decade's worth of child abuse. From somebody in my family, a direct link to my own lineage, my parent. Survived 10 years worth of that to finally, be able to step away from it and to put him away and to try to live a life that sent me right into drugs, addiction, and violence. My story, unfortunately, hasn't been the nicest one, and I've had to adapt. We'll call it that. I sit here today in front of you telling you this story because I'm a human being like the rest of you, but somewhere in this life, being a human for me became less than ideal. You could say I started as a child, you could say I started when the drugs came, but the drugs were just something that I used to hide the pain. We see these crises happen and we start to pick them apart and point fingers and judge and pass judgment when we really have no idea why that person's sitting there in the first place. So I'm sitting here today to tell you why we wind up sitting in those places, letting you pass judgment on us as we struggle to want to draw breath, as we struggle to reason with living. You know, so for some of us, these escapes become mandatory. When life's so ugly, when you can't get out, when you know that people are looking at you differently, when these things eat at you in here, eventually you just want it to stop. Now, drugs were the easiest thing for me to find. It was really not that hard, especially being in the gang life that I was and using, you know, my fists as wrecking balls for justice. Drugs and alcohol, booze, women, all of that came with it. And that life really suited me because I had no family to begin with. So I found a family, or they found me. They saw that something they could use in me and offered me all the things that I needed in life right then. And that was something to forget. My drug of choice, ecstasy, or MDMA, depending on how you look at it, saved my life. I wouldn't be sitting here today sharing my story with these great people in front of you without these drugs. You know, we talk about the after, we talk about the where we are now, but I have to tell you guys that those drugs saved my life. If I wasn't able to escape every day, if I wasn't able to not hurt for a moment, for a little blip, I would not have made it. And to further my point, up until last year, even as recently as last month, suicide still has this wonderful grip on me from time to time. 2019, I talk about it openly, was the last time that I made an attempt on my life. 2019, 3 years into healing, into therapy. I own my own business. I had a daughter, a family. Have a daughter still. She's still here, not had. Have one. She's great. Looks like me. She's super cute, awesome, does all the things. She's a big piece into why I live now. We'll get to that. But in that thick of it, suicide was the only option that I had because I didn't want to go back to the drugs. Because I can't. I'm a better person now. People are going to judge me. They're going to judge my family. They're going to not see the person behind the pain. I sit here today to humanize the stats that you're going to see throughout this week. I sit here today to openly tell you people with addiction are bad people. I'm here to tell you that people with addiction are the most misunderstood human beings on this planet. And I can tell you that because if you just went and asked somebody, they would tell you. My good friend Vanessa sitting here with me, didn't even have to ask, she's gonna tell you. We want to share our stories to people who want to hear it because we know what suffering is like. We know what it's like to be here in this place, looking at 5 people staring me in the face on the computer screen and knowing that I'm alone at the end of this and during it. See, we are still here. Like Marliss said, 50 years and we ain't fucking budged. Time out. I'm gonna say, nobody warned me on swearing or not. Nobody did. And that was my first one in like 4 minutes. I've got, Vanessa knows that's a low quota for me. Woo! I almost made it.
I think it's all good, don't worry.
I was close. You know, we're still here. I've only been in this fight for 5 years, like using my voice, using my story, speaking. I've been in this life since I was 5. Nothing's changed. We still have some so close again. I don't really like the guy running this province and pulling funding from things that we could use, like social programming, to help treat the symptom, the thing behind the thing that you see on the street. But we can't even get that done because somebody deems us less than. At the end of the day, the dotted line, the bottom line is addicts. We don't use that word anymore. People with addictions are treated less than because nobody chooses to understand why or how we got there. So now I'm here, Ethan Nicholas, 5'11", 200-pound black man, former gang member, former person who was addicted to drugs, telling you out loud that we are people. I wrote a book last year in 30 days. It took me 30 days to do it. I'm about to have it published. I have 4 businesses that are successful. I have a beautiful daughter that loves me to death, and I love her to death. See, I'm still a person that I can talk to you and sit here and talk to you, make you feel happy about it. But 5 years ago, you wouldn't have given me a second look. 10 years ago, you might have actually called the police on me just for existing. Some of you still do now, but that's a whole other topic, and this isn't about that. I'm here to tell you that we are still people. We are still human, and I am no different than you. You are one decision away from being where I was. Everyone on this side of the plane knows that you're always one decision away. One happening, one bad thing that just took you too long to get past. That's all it is. That's all it ever was. That's all it ever will be. And that's why we need to start putting the human back in human. And that's, I'm a wait. Thank you.
Powerful. When's your book coming out?
As soon as possible.
And you'll give us a link or something that we can promote?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Yeah, no. Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Janz. I'm a city councilor with Ward Papasteo in the city of Edmonton. That's the area basically south of the river, White Ave down to 34th Avenue. So I'm the LRT line, the U of A, the River Valley, Mill Creek, a lot of those areas, a lot of areas right now that, you know, we're hearing about poverty, crime, unhoused neighbors, the River Valley challenges coming with encampments and everything else too. So this is a very well-timed conversation. And earlier this year, you know, we've heard even the police will tell you the biggest drivers of disorder and crime in our community are addictions, trauma, and mental health. And there's a growing recognition of this. But as I was listening to Ethan, one thing that kept blinking for me was, thank goodness that he's here, that he could go through that journey, because one of the current concerns we have now, a clear pressing concern, is around we lost almost 1,800 Albertans last year to a poison drug supply. And now what I worry about is that the poisonings and the deaths from poisoning have become so dire that this is beyond just like we hear a lot about, well, treatment or recovery, etc. You can't do that if you're dead. And we're seeing more and more the challenges with poisonings. And so I wanted to open it up and hear maybe from each of you, maybe we'll on my screen, Marliss, Vanessa, and Ethan, can you share a little bit about the drug poisoning epidemic and your thoughts around here? I know, Marliss, you were just getting into it a bit with Safe Supply.
I just wonder, because Vanessa didn't have a chance to do hers, because you would come.
Oh, my
late,
apologies. I thought I
that's
missed
what
Vanessa.
Maybe
Well,
we should, start there.
Yeah, great point. Well, yeah, Vanessa, over to you. Sorry, and take it where you want to go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Glade. My spirit name is Mountain View Woman. So I'm a product of residential school. So my great-grandparents went to residential school. My grandparents went to residential school, and my mother went to residential school. Did you hear her talking in the background, or no? Did you just hear me? Okay, hang on. So I'll just move. My childhood, I was never raised by my grandparents, never raised by my parents. So I was raised by my grandparents. They loved me the only way that they knew how, which it was still love, but that they didn't really know how to love me. So I've had abandonment issues since I was a month old. I first started trying drugs when I was 13 years old, drinking alcohol when I was 13. I wanted to fit in with people, I wore many masks. So I would do whatever it took to fit in with the older crowd or my peers. And I had nobody to show my emotions, to share my emotions with. So I was alone for many years. I'm 43 years old now. And I sobered up 3 years, 9 months to the day. And it took me that long to that I was alone. I've had 4 kids, 3 kids I don't raise. Or actually, no, I'm lying now. I got my oldest living with me now, my daughter and my son living with me. My 15-year-old's in Vegas right now at his grandmother's. But I still maintain that connection with those other two children. Actually, my 5 years old's at my house right now with my dad visiting. I don't have a very good relationship with my sister. She's really angry with me because of my past decisions, and I was sexually abused. I done everything under the sun. I've injected drugs. But that's part of my story. It's like traumatic, everything that's happened to me, and that's what led me to drugs and alcohol, to think that I was a normal person, to be a normal person, because I didn't know what normal was. I didn't know what love was. I didn't know any of this stuff, right? I'm still learning. I'm still learning how to love myself to this day, right? And it's a journey. This one counselor, I've been to treatment 6 times. This one counselor told me, he said, it's going to take probably the rest of my life to heal. And I don't know if I'm going to live till tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to still be alive tomorrow. So, and it's hard as hell to heal. And you know what the easiest thing to do right now would be to go right outside these doors and go pick up some dope, go get a needle, put it in my arm. That's the easiest thing I could do right now. So would I rather choose the easy way, or the struggle of healing and having my kids in my life and being uncomfortable with my feelings? Being uncomfortable in your feelings sucks sometimes. And it's all a process. And I go to ceremony. If I didn't sober up and change my life, I wouldn't know my ceremony and the ways of my people. And it's ceremony is actually what really helped me stay sober, stay clean. I mean, I'm trying not to use the clean because it's like saying I'm dirty. So I'll rephrase that. My healing journey. Now I was part of this one documentary. It's called The Meaning of Empathy. It's about the opioid overdose crisis on the blood reserve. I was pregnant with my 3-year-old 3 years ago in Kainai. I've done a documentary that's going to be released here on May 12th up in Grand Prairie about my success story with Western Free Tribal Council. I'm on the Niso Kamakiwan Council. That's an Indigenous Advisory Council for the Edmonton City Police. So instead of me running from the cops, I'm working with the cops. Sorry. Go figure, right? Like who would have ever thought that I would be doing something like this? I was with the WARE. I was on the board of directors. I started off as a peer liaison worker, and Miss Marliss here presented a job with me. So I was with Streetworks as a STI outreach worker for 2 years. I just recently switched over to another job role as her pregnancy support worker. I used to be a client with them. I had 2 kids with them. I had the supports of these beautiful ladies here. And now I've come full circle, and I'm working with the pregnant ladies where I once was. And I really, really enjoy my job. I love it. I love working, being able to help the women where I was once at. And I can relate to them, right? Because I've been there, done that. But every woman is different, but we all have our own stories. We are just people, and I truly believe that my life that happened to me, everything that happened to me in my life was supposed to happen. It didn't have to, but I think it was meant to happen for me to be right here where I am right now at this point in my life. So thanks for letting me share.
That's powerful. I wrote down the documentary on the side. They have it actually. I think you can watch it for free on the National Film Board site. Is that right?
Yes, actually, I'm gonna say I was actually with Ethan on Addictions Don't Discriminate. I'm one of the storytellers as well. Yeah, because I've done so many things that I can't even remember all of them. Like, a lot. Oh my gosh, I've been really busy. I've been keeping myself really busy.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And Addictions Don't Discriminate, is that when that's yet to be released?
We actually did it.
Oh, I see.
It's now a mobile exhibit for everybody participating and all the people that I can see. We released this thing with all the ton, like this was not me and Vanessa. Me and Vanessa are like, we just told our stories. It's run by MAPS and the city, and you can actually like set the exhibit up in your schools and your workplaces. It can be ordered for functions. It's a whole mobile thing that we're trying to get as far and wide as we possibly can.
That's okay. Yes, sorry. I thought it was another
Actually,
documentary. I did see
It's
that.
actually Reach Edmonton, yeah.
Yeah, Reach Edmonton. It was in Stanley Milner Library earlier this year, I think in November, December. Yeah, it was
Yeah, so
really
it's-
powerful.
Yeah, so it's available anywhere, like if like in schools or anybody wants that to come to them, they just reach out and they can bring it to them to exhibit.
Well, this is good. We've already got our homework. We've got a book to read. We've got a documentary to watch. We got an exhibit to take on the road. That's great. Yeah. I really appreciate it as well, Vanessa, how you were sharing the importance of culturally appropriate supports and how ceremony is so pivotal here. And, you know, in my old life at Big Brothers Big Sisters, where I used to work, we would hear that a lot from young people about craving that deep community. So, yeah. Yeah, well, hearing introductions from each of you, maybe I wanted to just touch on a little bit about the 1,700 lives lost in Alberta and open up there around the drug poisonings and Marliss, did you want to start and share?
Sure. You know, I'll just be the ultimate nurse here and say, you know, it isn't even the deaths. The deaths are horrific, but there are also people who have survived an overdose, but now have long-term physical and mental disabilities from them. You know, when you don't have enough oxygen in your body, it especially affects your brain and your kidneys. But then there are other things. And so it's not just the deaths. It is just so many people now that are going to require further supports in their lives, when a lot of times they didn't have that many supports to begin with. You know, the poisoning crisis, I think there's a few myths about it. I do think, you know, the idea that everyone who uses an illegal drug is addicted and needs to go to treatment is not true. There are many people who use substances in a non-addictive way. It would be like saying anyone who has a drink of alcohol should go to treatment. You know, it is that silly. And so, you know, but I think there's this general characterization that everybody who uses a substance needs to go to treatment. And, you know, as you'd sort of said before, you know, treatment, I always say treatment doesn't help you on a Saturday night when you're feeling desperate and lonely and you feel like you need to use a substance. You know, that you don't have that option of a treatment program, and it might not be appropriate anyway. And sometimes people, as Ethan and Vanessa have talked about, feel pretty lonely in this world. And so a big part of what we need to be thinking about is harm reduction activities. And harm reduction is not opposed to treatment. We're just really aware of how it fits into the big picture. And so I'm always, you know, for 27 years now, have been trying to help people understand that harm reduction will help us all be safer and healthier. So that's what I would probably say.
Vanessa and Ethan, one question I had for you. It seems when I look at services in the community, there's a lot geared to adults 18 plus, and both of you spoke to trials and tribulations starting in your younger years, teens and earlier. How do we as Edmonton support especially young people on that continuum of service and care?
Honestly, you know, at that point from where I sit, and I'm a different case, you know, Vanessa's a different case. It's this preventative thing. You know, we see the adult in crisis in their place and in the thing that's happened after, but we're talking that shit wasn't overnight. Where was this thing before? Who the fuck was looking after them before that? You know, there's this gap. Like, there were so many times, and I talked about this in the exhibit, in my story, that my shit should have been ended. From the sexual abuse and me acting out, the physical abuse and me acting out, to being high in school, so high that my teachers knew it. Nobody said a fucking word to me. They all let me rewrite tests if I failed them. That was their mode of helping. They all were, no, you can come back. Like, I didn't need it. I aced them anyways. That's how functioning you can be as somebody who uses drugs to escape. You can literally blow through school as the outcast and do just fine. This idea is that we're catching it in adulthood. No, there's signs here that we're missing. Things like trauma-informed care, 11ofus.ca, one of the greatest resources Alberta has. Why I say Alberta, and I mean that confidently, is because it was tested and ran only in Edmonton. We could, all of those free resources, trauma-informed care, suicide prevention, all of that free stuff that isn't all totally free anymore, was localized as a test run to Edmonton to see if we could make a dent in this thing. And that's exactly what they did. If more of my teachers had been trauma-informed, I would not have been abused for a decade while going through fucking school. And it wasn't like it was a one-off. I'm talking 3,000 offenses on my body and nobody knew. Why did I get put in timeout so often? Why was I in detention so often? Why was I getting expelled? Because I was fucking acting out and not a single person knew where to look. Like, we are missing and doing such detriment to these kids because not a single person can clock that something's wrong. We just chalk it up to ADD, which I do have, ADHD I also have, or all these things that we can pop pills into their mouths. First of all, that direct correlation is fucked up from the get-go, because that's all we're trying to do, drug our children. Then you wonder why they turn to drugs later, because they learn that the only thing that can help them is a drug. But I don't want to poke holes in that theory right now. Drugs can be safe and can be healthy, but hey, when there's nobody around and you learn this first, that's this second. Vanessa, you can talk, I'm getting heated.
Did you say the question again? I was getting heated up with you, Ethan.
Just
yeah.
hearing more about the continuing of care, especially for young people.
Okay. Well, for me as an Indigenous woman, we need more Indigenous awareness training as to residential school effects as well. You know, colonization, because it all comes from there. Everything that I have endured is because of that. So once we start informing more people, educating more people on the effects of residential school and colonization, then we'll be able to have a better understanding, and even having more teaching as us as Indigenous people of how we bring up our families, how we raise our families. You know what I mean? Like, and our children. Because you bring into Western society into our Indigenous ways of teaching it, it doesn't. It's like, because we do it totally different, and Western society does it in a totally different way. I think that's where I'd start. And healing our elders, healing our families, healing our adults, because if our adults can't heal, then they can't take care of our children, and then those children are going to be traumatized, and they're going to have those effects still as well. So we need to start even at our elders and work our way up. Like, I'm trying to break that intergenerational trauma with my kids. I may not even do it because I'm still learning, but I'm starting, and it's a struggle, and it's like that's a very complicated question. It's like, but I say there, start there.
It's education-informed care. Like Vanessa and I both hammered the same point home. Education for people who provide care. If you're caring for somebody and you can't answer a question about their culture, you shouldn't be caring for them. And that sounds super black and white, no pun intended, but I fucking meant it. Like, if you can't, what are you doing trying to teach them about life from a perspective that's not theirs? Like, Vanessa nailed it, and I can talk about being a mixed race man and having the same kind of questions going through my entire life and dealing with not having access to these things. And the fact that Black people deal with trauma and shit different. Every culture deals with that shit differently, and ours is super toxic because we like to bring it in and keep it behind closed doors and nothing ever gets fixed, and that's why it's a continual cycle. Like generational trauma is for Indigenous, it's the same shit, just looks different and spelt different in ours. It's that education coming through people who are giving care early on. You know, for people like me, I didn't learn anything from my family. I learned it from my teachers, from the people that I spent time with outside of my school, because everything I could learn at home, was toxic and disgusting and not okay. So I learned from everywhere else how to exist in this life. I had to learn at, oh God, my daughter's 5, 26, math is not my favorite thing, how to be a dad when nobody knows how to be a dad. There's no book. We know, anyone who's a parent knows there's no book. Now, when you have no home life to learn love that's appropriate, you really don't know how to do the thing. And I had to somehow get ahead of this, and I had to really dive into therapy and realize that all of the good things that I need to do for my daughter are the things that I get to do for everybody else in this work, and that's love. You know, all I need to do is love. Like, I really just had to figure that out. It took a long time, and it's actually super simple. Hard to do all the time, super simple, just love. Cool. Had I not known that going through life, I would never have made it this way. I would never have been able to get through healing. But all of that shit I experienced came from somebody not knowing how to handle, deal, or care for a little boy. In Vanessa's case, a little girl. Caring for children should be the simplest fucking thing on the planet. And I made it up until 26 before care actually started being provided. Wild.
Yeah, it's there's so much here to unpack in one lunch session that, I think one thing that I'm left with is, even 20 years ago, mental health wasn't talked about as much, and it was a little more stigmatized, and it was more there. Now it's so mainstream, and I want to say thanks to the CMHA for hosting events just like this, for raising awareness. Marliss, I saw your hand.
Just one thing that I think is important. We've done a lot of research through our program, and what we know is, when you're talking about youth, we know that 50% of the people that we see that come to the needle exchange program that have been injecting drugs, 50% of them started before the age of 19. The most common ages in Edmonton were 12 and 15 for the time of first injection, and the youngest was 9. So, when we only focus our effort, those kids are doing them for a reason. And really, like Ethan said, for many, that's their solution right now. But we have to get our head out of the sand and start giving good care, doing good education, like thinking broadly and getting out of this moral, swooning about drugs. Let's start talking about them. Let's start talking about why people use them and what we can do to keep people safe and what we can do to prevent people from feeling the need to use them. So
I really quick say, like Marliss keeps touching on it, and no one else has said anything. And this idea that these drugs are so bad, this stigma that it is. And I can tell you with personal and complete, utter zero give a fuck spread about whatever things, without cannabis and psilocybin mushrooms, so the psychedelics that are banned, were banned, and they can be still, without those two things, I'd be dead. In my adult life, when suicide had me, I was on antipsychotics that had me in the hospital every week. I was on antidepressants that almost killed me twice. With my therapist's help, cannabis and psilocybin, I was able to work through enough trauma to actually still be standing here and improve my mental health. I microdose psilocybin still to this day to help me stay on top of my healing at any given time. There are literal plants deemed as drugs that can help us shift this mental fight and start to fix trauma at its core. But the stigma around drugs is still, drugs are bad, and the people that do them are bad.
And one of the roles that I'm in, I'm the chair of the Canadian Drug Policy Coalition. And what we would always say is that drugs aren't the problem. Drug policy is the problem. Drugs are the solution for some people. And we just need to get our heads around that.
That's a really, really good point. Yeah. I realize we're almost at top of the hour. Just wanted to go around and as closing remarks, I want to see if you had something additional you wanted to share, or a resource, or something you wanted to plug for folks watching that they should go and listen to, learn about, read, or watch. I know we've got a book, we got a documentary. I'm always looking for things to share, and I would love to hear from each of you something that's moved you. So throw your hand up when ready. And yes, you can plug your own stuff.
One of the things that I'll say is that if people want to learn more about drug policy, the Canadian Drug Policy Coalition is a fabulous resource for people. I think that, and I had a great point like 30 seconds ago and it's gone. But anyway, a resource for people would be the CDPC.
Ethan, I'll let you talk about addiction. Don't discriminate, okay, bro? So also, if you get a chance, check out the link. It's I don't know how to say it in Blackfoot, but it's in English. It's called The Meaning to Empathy. Her last name, I don't remember her name, but it's called The Meaning of Empathy. It's about a documentary about the opioid crisis down on the Blackfoot Reserve.
That's out of the Tail Feathers.
Yes, that's the one. That's Tail Feathers, yeah. Also, you can check out the Needs of Crystal Meth Addicts through AHS. It's a webinar I did with Dr. Janetta as well. I think they're still airing it. It was a couple of years back, but she kept putting it on, so it might be on there.
For me, it'll be obviously Carrie put it in there. Addictions Don't Discriminate. We've put in 11ofus.ca, my own website. Fight me on this for the work that I do for mental health and speaking. And I do this stuff every day. I try to raise awareness with my story. But honestly, final remarks are at the end of the day. I don't know who's listening, but sometimes we forget that we're people doing this thing together, and we should be much closer together. The more we come together in community, the easier this life is. But there are very, 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 very ridiculous numbers of people who will feel alone because nobody's asked, how are you? Are you okay? Do you need anything? Can I do anything for you? Try to remember as you walk through life that there's other fucking people walking this planet in their own bit of struggle. And all it takes is one moment of, I see you, to change and to make lasting change. Because it only ever took one person to say, what's going on to me, to get me to spill the beans about my abuse. And I mean it, one person. That's all it ever takes.
Yeah, powerful stuff. Thank you all for making time today and for sharing. And thank you to CMHA Edmonton for hosting and for creating space for this. I know they've got a number of other great panelists every day this week for lunch. So do check those out and share them on your socials with friends, etc. Yeah, I thank you all. I look forward to watching and learning and seeing you out in the community doing the good work you're doing. So thank you so much. And CMHA, any closing words or we'll disconnect from here?
No, thanks for, again, Councilor Janz and Marliss and Ethan, Vanessa for being part of this and sharing. It's been a really powerful conversation. I know there's lots for us to take away. Did just put the link in the chat for the upcoming events throughout the week. And we hope you will join us for some others when you're free. So again, thanks to all our panelists and everyone for attending. And yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. See you, everyone.